this series, this series started out as conversation that we had within El Merequetengue, thinking of like, what can we do? What can we do in this, everything that is happening? And, the first year, I think myself, I was just mostly in shock and not really knowing what to do. But as things, progress, this idea of having this webinar seemed like a really good option to at least provide resources and what to do, how to be prepared. And a lot of things came up. This became a conversation with a lot of different folks. So we have representation, like it became a really great, robust group of people from different chapters, ASLA, Northern chapters from Northern California, Arizona, Illinois, New York, Maryland, Upstate New York, in Northern California, as well as some firms. We have TERREMOTO, TOPOPHYLA, Bethany Rydmark Landscapes, and Crown Landscapes. And the series is really a lot of folks. Some of us, you see us here, it's been a lot of work from a lot of people to bring this together. And I'm really grateful that we can do this to provide a space for all of us to come together, to join, to participate, because I think that in this time when we see human rights being so blatantly disregarded, that this space for community building, this space for coming together and talking and supporting each other is a political act. And that we're all here to support each other and know who we are and know how we can support each other. So the space has really been a place where we have poured all of our frustration, our insecurities, and our desire to be proactive into this collective and this webinar. So this is the third one. We've already had two that were recorded if you want to see them. And we have one more coming up that's going to be in person. So this is more of embodiment, and the way that we see it is, sort of how we have the drills for fire or earthquake drills, and then you have to actually practice it. So you know where the exit route is, and you know where to go, and you know where you gather, and all of that. So the fourth part of the webinar is an in-person where we will get to embody what to do in this situation so that we're not taken by surprise, and we know how to act, and we know how to be grounded and calm as much as we can if we are confronted with a situation like that. And we just learned that we're going to be able to do this at the LAF Summit in Detroit, and we're also waiting to see if we can have it happen at the ASLA conference in LA. So those will be two great opportunities. Hopefully you all can join us and we can, practice and rehearse this in person. I want to introduce you to our great moderators today. We have Amina Mohammed, who is a registered landscape architect. She works at Ayers St. Cross in Baltimore, Maryland. She's a holistic thinker who integrates community and landscape narratives to create meaningful user experiences. Her work emphasizes thoughtful placemaking, environmental stewardship, and designs that highlight cultural and ecological stories. She is the DEI committee chair of the Maryland chapter of ASLA. Amina is passionate about initiatives and projects that raise awareness, foster engagement, and collaborate with local partners to support community well-being. And she has been a wonderful moderator in our previous webinar. So thank you, Amina. And we also have Citlali, who is a graduate of the University of California in Berkeley with a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture. She has been dedicated to advocating for underserved communities, and she is currently pursuing her master's degree at the University of Arizona, where she is exploring ecosystem services as guiding principles for urban growth, which she intends to incorporate into her thesis. So thank you, Citlali, also for being a part of this webinar and helping us with the moderation. And I am beyond thrilled to introduce you to Daisy Dominguez. We are super grateful to have you here joining us, Daisy. Thank you. Daisy is really fantastic. So in 2010, Ms. Dominguez received her Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts and Science with a major in Political Science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. In 2013, Ms. Dominguez received her Juris Doctor from UIC Law School. Pursuing a legal career dedicated to social justice, Ms. Dominguez founded Justice Connect with a focus on immigration. Justice Connect operates with two principles: financial accessibility and social justice. She founded Justice Connect under the mission to build a socially conscious law practice that provides access to the legal system to low and moderate income communities. Justice Connect provides educational legal workshops to communities to educate immigrants about their legal rights and collaborates with community organizations and institutions to host staff trainings and on-site consultations at their local centers. Ms. Dominguez is an adjunct professor at UIC Law School. She has served on the board of directors for the University of Illinois Latina and Latino Alumni Association. She's an associate board of directors for Trust Just the Beginning, Hannah Center, and the Wiley Resource Center. Ms. Dominguez is also the founder of the John Marshall Law School Academic Enhancement Program and academic rotation program geared towards increasing the academic rotation rates for first-year minority law students. So thank you so much, Daisy. We are beyond thrilled. I know you have a lot of information to share with us. So please, everybody, welcome Daisy. And without further ado, I pass it on to her.
Thank you guys so much. I'm very excited to be here and to support you guys and the community, especially right now. It is critical, and this is why I love being able to do my job, and this is why I went to law school to be able to make a difference and support our community. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everyone see the screen? Perfect. So the first thing is a disclosure. So this is just general information. It is not meant for anyone to be able to assess their own case or assess anyone's immigration eligibility. We always encourage everyone to always speak and schedule a one-on-one consultation with a experienced licensed attorney to be able to review their options. But this will provide everyone information to be able to at least have the basic knowledge on certain matters. The topics that we're going to discuss today is going to be the Know Your Rights. Then we're going to discuss U visas, which is another alternative pathway for many families to be able to obtain lawful status in the US. And then we're going to end with a general overview of family petitions so that people can kind of understand the overall general process of what it takes to go through the family petitions and currently right now what is happening and how long those processes can be taking. So starting off with the Know Your Rights, regardless of a person's status, everyone, oh, I'm sorry, can you guys still see the screen? Okay. Regardless of a person's status, everyone is entitled to constitutional rights. The first thing we like to highlight is remaining silent. Remaining silent is really important because there is a lot of basic information that immigration uses in the charges of deportation, such as where did the person come from. So there's usually typically 4 different charges, and it starts indicating that the person is not a U.S. Citizen, the person is a national of X, Y, and Z country, the person entered through this state or around approximately this month or date. So information such as even your name, what country are you from, how or how long ago did you enter, all of that information is utilized. It sounds sometimes very simple and basic, but it is not. It is part of the charging documents. So the best thing that somebody who is undocumented, without any status, is to remain silent. We have know your rights cards, and many communities have created also know your rights cards for people to be able to have in their wallets. So if somebody is stopped and they, forget what they learned in the trainings, are nervous, don't know what to do, what to say, simply take out that card and just read the information on that card. In my firm, we have a QR code with all of the links of different resources. One being the Know Your Rights cards, where people can print those out, cut them out, and share them, and they fit right in your wallet. It's also very important for people to speak with an attorney. So in immigration court, in criminal court, people are provided a public defender, but in immigration court, you have to provide your own attorney or you have to represent yourself. So it's very important for people to have a plan in place with their families of what will happen if they are detained, and have some type of general plan in place. One being having a attorney that they can contact, an information contact number of that attorney. Typically, we recommend that every person try to memorize that attorney's number. If not, at least be able to call and contact their family for their family to connect with that attorney. And do not, you are given a phone call. But sometimes what can happen is that phone call may take some time. So a person can be detained and not communicate with the family right away. So typically, when the person goes missing, then the family is trying to locate that individual. And unfortunately, even for us as attorneys, because of the way that people are being detained and moved around constantly, we even sometimes have a hard time locating this person. Until after some time has passed, because they're moving them from place to place, and then finally they are then given that phone call that they're allowed to have. So we encourage people, remain silent, have an attorney, request that phone call, and do not sign anything. Many times, the ICE officers are providing false information, telling people just sign, these are standard documents. If you do not understand what you are reading, or the document that is being presented to you, do not sign anything, because one of the documents that they may have you sign is a voluntary departure, saying that you are waiving all your rights to have a hearing, to go before a judge, and are requesting to be immediately returned back to your home country without you knowing it. If a person signs a document without knowing what they signed, then it's a lot more difficult for us as attorneys to overcome that when that document has been signed. So it's very important. Whatever you do, don't be pressured into signing anything. Request that phone call, speak to your family, speak to your attorney before signing anything. Let's see here. The next thing is, what happens if ICE comes to your home? So when your home is the place where you have the most protections, so it's very important to build a habit of never opening the door, telling everyone in the household, even little ones, to not open the door the minute that doorbell rings. Make it a habit to always look out the window and verify who's at the door before opening the door, because the minute that you open that door, you've given consent for ICE to enter, even without a warrant. So it's very important to remain the door closed until you've confirmed and verified that the officer actually has a warrant signed by a judge, right? Many times, 9 times out of 10, the ICE officers are carrying ICE warrants. They also call them warrants, but they are not the actual warrant that gives them authorization to enter someone's home without their permission. In order for them to enter your home, they need that signed warrant by the judge, and that signed warrant is very difficult for them to obtain. So it is not that easy. So 9 times out of 10, they probably will not have that warrant and will not be allowed into the home unless you provide access and open the door. So that is very important to always confirm whether they have that. If the minute that they are knocking on the door, we also encourage people to start recording, because if they're lying or providing false information or threatening, etc., then we have documentation of what was happening. And then if they break into the home without that warrant, then they're violating your rights. And so it's very important to have documentation and evidence about what occurred if they entered without a warrant. And then try to verify before opening the door to see that warrant. So don't open the door to see the warrant. Ask them to put the warrant by the window to take a look at it. And I will be showing you guys examples on the next slides of what does an ICE warrant look like and what does a judge signed warrant looks like. So you see, visually, you can see there's a huge difference between both of them. If you can't see through a window and there's no way for you to see it without opening the door, still do not open the door. Maybe tell them slide it underneath the door, or better yet, just don't open the door at all. Because if they try to enter by force and they don't have that, then they are violating your rights. So just instead of opening the door to confirm, because there's no other way to confirm, don't open the door. And also, if they do come in and you've recorded, ask for the agent's badge numbers or to take a look to see if you can see any license plate numbers or any identifying information if they have entered without a warrant. And lastly, ICE doesn't need a warrant for public spaces. So I also want to discuss what rights do you people have in other spaces. So this is on the topic of your home. In public spaces, they don't need a warrant to be able to search and ask questions. But the thing to keep in mind in public spaces is they also cannot be racially profiling and just picking people who look brown. If you're seeing that they're only targeting and asking people for proof of their status to only people who look brown or people of color, then they are also only selecting certain individuals based on the color of their skin and racial profiling. So it's also important to note that for those that are citizens in public, if you witness any ICE activity, you are allowed to record, and I will get into that a little bit more on the next slides. For employers and businesses, community organizations have been putting together flyers for businesses to post in their businesses, indicating that they do not provide consent or authorization for ICE to enter their business, that it is a private business, and they do not consent to them entering without a warrant. We encourage businesses to keep their locations locked if they're able to, and only allow people who are authorized to be inside of that business to enter. So try to have some signs or create some signs or connect with some community organizations who have already created some of these signs to have those posted in businesses and be able to try to create that information so that you are identifying that your business is not authorizing ICE to enter. And that's how employers can protect their employees by also having a plan in place for their employees on what will their job site be doing if ICE comes, having protocols in place for ensuring that ICE doesn't enter their premises without actually having a warrant and being authorized to be able to enter with that warrant. So employers can also and businesses can also protect immigrants in their spaces. This is an example of what a warrant signed by a judge looks like. And it will tell you the person's name. It will tell you, it will have a signature by the judge. It will have a date. So the important things here to also note that not just because they have this, you should just right away assume that it is all correct. Sometimes it has a different name and there is no one in those premises with that name that they're looking for. So if it doesn't have a person's, you don't recognize the person's name or anyone that is in that location, then they don't have authorization to come because they're looking for a specific type for a specific person. And then also the date. Double check the date. Is the date actually within the recent months, or is the date from, years ago, 2006, right? And we're in 2026. If it's within a couple of months, then that's fine. I would say, about 2 months or so, that could be fine. But if it's months between or a year or more, then I would question whether that is even valid due to the date. And also, is it actually signed? Because some of them might not just be signed, they were prepared, but the judge never actually signed off on it. So make sure all of those three things, who are they specifically looking for, what date, which judge, that was actually signed. And then this is what the warrant for ICE looks like, and it's called warrant for arrest of alien. And so as you can see visually, they are very visually different. So people can just visually see that that is not at all the warrant necessary for them to be able to enter. And they'll always say, yes, I have a warrant. Yes, I have a warrant, but that's the warrant. That's their own warrant, not the actual judicial warrant. And then once if somebody is detained, there's a couple things. You can locate someone through the ICE custody locator. So it's called locator.ice.gov. And you can search a person either by their name, their date of birth, and their country of birth. And that's typically what you will use before the person has contacted you. So if the person went missing and they haven't called, you won't have the A number unless that person already had a case prior and you know that they have an A number, but otherwise you would use that basic information to try to locate the person. But again, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes depending on how often the person is being moved or where they're actually located, they may not be in the system right away. And unfortunately, sometimes it has gone days where the person does not show up on the system and they are missing, where we, even as attorneys, can have a hard time locating a person. Sometimes people are being held in spaces that are not even actual detention centers and shouldn't be in certain spaces being held, but due to the inability of placing them in a detention, they're detaining them elsewhere. Now, once the person actually calls, it's very important for the family to ask for that A number. That A number will then give us a bit more access to checking information online, statuses of any court dates or hearings, or if the person is relocated. So if they are moved to another location, then you can be tracking it much more easily with an A number. The other thing to keep in mind too is if a person is undocumented, it's also important for them to make sure if they have removal orders already in their background or not, because that will also make a difference on what will happen to the person when what rights they have in deportation if they have a removal order. So there is a number that you may be able to call in order to see if there is a removal order, or use again your A number to check the court system. But that is typically for people that are already in the system. So there's two different scenarios. There's about two different scenarios of how somebody can have a removal order without even knowing. The first can be for individuals who've been here for a long time, but unfortunately, when they were entering without inspection at the border, were stopped by Border Patrol and then returned back. There are different ways, and also depending on when that happened, how long ago that was, if it was prior to our new laws or not, how they were then returned at the border. And so some people could have a expedited removal from the border and not even know that how they were returned was actually through a removal order expeditedly, or if they were just voluntarily given the option to go back. Because people at the borders, when they are sent back, they many times don't even get any documentation or know of anything. And so for those that have been here for a long time but have had encounters at the border, it's very important for them to schedule consultations with immigration attorney. We can FOIA records to try to see what they have in their background, and then see if they have had, if any of those encounters resulted in any type of removal orders. And but there is also, although that is an option, unfortunately, FOIAs have been very difficult to obtain, and especially in the past year or so, they've been even more challenging to obtain. One, they've been taking a lot longer. Two, they unfortunately, we don't just FOIA, things are not just in one location. We typically submit FOIAs to different agencies and through different ways. So we submit a variety of different FOIAs to be able to try to gather as much information, because sometimes things will be misplaced or in another location. And so, depending on the agency, some agencies will be pretty quick, give a turnaround. Some agencies may take a lot longer to obtain that record. And then on top of that, the other challenging thing that we've been encountering is two other things that we've been encountering is they are incorrectly denying the request based on allegations of not providing certain information, which is not true. They're requiring us to request to provide more information than we're required to do so, and then or saying that there are no records when we know in fact that something happened and there should be a record of this, but they are not disclosing that information. So although we can obtain FOIAs for people who may not know what happened and are trying to figure that out, that can be a pretty challenging process in and of itself. But we do encourage to try to go through that process to see what we can obtain if a person has had encounters at the border. The other scenario is for individuals who are in court proceedings who either presented themselves at the border seeking asylum or seeking protection, or were detained at the border, paroled, placed in proceedings, or put on bond and then placed in proceedings, but nonetheless were released and are in court proceedings. Depending on the case, the person may have had their court date adjusted, changed, and weren't notified. And so we are seeing right now a trend of individuals who were paroled under the Biden administration, and were never given charges for deportation, were never given a court date, and now are being scheduled to come back in for ICE check-ins, and then at the check-in are then either placed in an ankle monitor or detained, or and then at that point, given the charges that they were never given many years ago. So there are those individuals that, haven't had a court for many years and are now starting to get their notices. And if in the courts or the agencies did not have the proper address, then they may be sending documents to an old address and the person never gets notified, or in other instances, claim that they sent the notices, but the notices actually never were delivered. Because I've even had it happen to us where we never received certain notices. So we make it a habit to check the online system consistently and not rely on getting these paper notices. So I encourage people, if they have ever been in proceedings at the border, were released, to be checking their A numbers on that 1-800 number, or online on the EOIR case status, and be checking it regularly, because they are advancing cases. And so don't rely on the date that you were given or that you don't have a date, because if you then do not attend on the date that you were given because you weren't notified or weren't aware, then the judge will order an in absentia order in against you for not failing to show up to court. And that's another way how people have removal orders without them even realizing and thinking that they're just waiting for their court date this entire time, and their court date actually happened and passed, and now they have an in absentia deportation order against them because they failed to go to court. And so there may be people that have removal orders without even realizing. So it's very important for them to identify whether that is something that's applicable to them. And if it is, if a person has a removal order, then they don't have the right to go before a judge and present their trial or their defense. And then simply what ICE is doing is processing the expedited removal to reinstate that order and proceed with removing the person. And the only way to stop that process from happening, that formal process of just getting the paperwork in and processing the person to return, is if the person claims that they are in fear of returning back to their home country. If an individual says that they are afraid to return to their home country, then the officer is not allowed to continue the removal process and has to provide that individual with an interview, a credible fear interview with the asylum officer for them to first determine whether the person has credible fear, and then also determine whether the person has the minimum requirements for asylum. And then if that person passes that interview, then the individual is given a court date with the judge to be able to present their asylum trial before the judge. But unfortunately for those individuals, they will remain for the most part detained while their entire process is happening until their trial. And if they are approved, there is still, unfortunately, the option for the government to appeal. So if the government does appeal, that may put a hold on their release until they finish through the entire process. So for those that do have removal orders, then there are more limitations. So it's very important for people to identify that. The other thing is reporting. So this is also really important because especially now when we know that ICE is committing so many violations, that these officers are also not well trained, that they are completely disregarding our laws and the safety of everyone. It is very important for people to document, to film, to photograph, and you are allowed, you have the right to report, to document in public spaces, in your property. This also extends to any law enforcement, sheriff, deputy, state police, ICE agents. So long as you are not interfering, you are allowed to record. And those records have been very helpful in litigation where we can present the evidence and show to these judges that what ICE is saying and what this administration is saying happened is actually a lie. And many judges who have seen the evidence of these footages are also, even in their decisions, indicating how blatantly lying this administration is when it comes to the facts, saying that the individuals were being aggressive when in fact they were not. So you are allowed to report and record. Now, although you have certain rights, the other thing is whether these officers are actually respecting your rights. And we know that they nowadays are not respecting any of our laws and our rights. And so it's more also to keep in mind the level of risk that you're willing to take personally to record and report. Because even if you have this right, and they do not respect it, are you, willing to be pushed or shoved or threatened to be arrested, etc.? Like, are you willing to take that risk? That's more of a personal risk assessment, even though you should be allowed and you shouldn't have to decide that. That is unfortunately what is the current climate. If that does happen, this is outside of my area scope. If somebody is arrested, then what you need to refer to is a criminal defense attorney for them to be able to assist you. For the most part, I think criminal defense attorneys will be able to assist you through that process as long as you were not violating any laws. And then if you are harmed, if you are injured or harmed while trying to report or protest, etc., you can speak to a civil rights attorney who will be able to file claims against ICE and the administration to defend your civil rights. And so those would be the individuals that you would collaborate with. And we encourage citizens to be able to record and report, especially because you're in a place where you can do more to protect these families and to provide assistance and to document. And there is a hotline. So ICER is an amazing organization that provides a lot of support. They've done tremendous work when it comes to advocacy and supporting people here in Illinois. And so they have a family support network hotline, and it's 1-855-HELP. my family, and the number is right there. Where individuals, it's the hotline is manned by volunteers, and so they will assist people in referring and providing social services, etc., and support in different languages. So I always share their hotline information for information to obtain resources and support. And their website also has a long list of all of the community legal aid organizations that provide free legal services. And they even identify what type of cases those organizations can help in representing. And you can also contact them to report ICE activity and that kind of information. And now, actually, before I move on to the next topic, I would like to see if there are any questions. I cannot see anyone, so I'm gonna just, if the moderators can let me know if there's any relevant questions regarding the Know Your Rights, or any questions that were provided in advance that maybe I haven't touched on during this part of the presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Daisy, for this first part of the introduction. This incredible wealth of information. So we have two questions. The first one is an anonymous attendee asked, if you are here legally, should you show your green card if you are stopped, or is there a risk that they can illegally seize it?
Okay, so great question. It depends. If the permanent resident has had encounters with the police, it's going to depend on what those encounters were and what happened with those encounters, whether they have a risk of being detained. If the person is a permanent resident has never had any encounters with the police, then no, if they show their green card, they shouldn't be detained, they shouldn't have a problem. But unfortunately, we are seeing that people, even with green cards, with work permits, with showing that they have some type of status, are still being taken. Even citizens, right, are being detained, right? So unfortunately, that can happen. And so if that does happen, then it's very important for them again to get that phone call, contact their family so that we can see what is going on. And again, also, don't sign anything. If you're a permanent resident, they can also have you sign a document that says that you are terminating your green card, that you are waiving and giving up your green card voluntarily. That sort of sneakiness has happened in at the airports too, where they will take people to secondary inspection and tell them, okay, just sign all this paperwork and we'll let you go. But in fact, they signed to waive their green card and to voluntarily give it up. So for green card holders, signing paperwork is also very important not to do without making sure that you know what you are signing, because you don't want to be voluntarily giving up your green card.
Incredibly troubling state of affairs that are currently going on. Thank you for sharing a bit of what to do. Anita Bueno asks, is it true that a judicial warrant is only valid for 14 days and must also have the name and address spelled correctly, or it is not valid?
Yeah, that depends. So I usually tell people within like the 30 days, 2 months. And so, but if it's been more than 2 weeks, then the longer the time goes by, then the less I would respect that warrant.
And is that dependent on the jurisdiction, this what is considered a
It
standard
depends.
time?
So I couldn't tell you right now for a fact, yes or no.
Okay. Um, and the spelling, is that important as part of the
I would say
curriculum?
so. I would say that spelling is critical. Some people spell their names differently, and that may be a different person, right? So yes.
Wonderful. I think that's it for the questions at the moment. If you'd like to continue on to the next section. Thank you.
Okay, great. So now to the next topic are U visas. Many times we'll hear of individuals that are in proceedings that were detained, that it seems like there are no options for them, yet they're married to a US citizen or they have children who are US citizens. And we're like, how are they not able to obtain status? Many times those individuals who have families that are citizens have other immigration violations that make them ineligible to be able to obtain a green card through their family members because of those certain immigration violations or because of their encounters with the police. And one of those violations that it always breaks my heart when I am consulting with people, because it's a violation that was created under the new law back in 96. And it was created to permanently bar people from being able to obtain any sort of status except for possibly under the U visa, which I'll discuss. But basically, through any family member, the person will be permanently barred from obtaining status unless they spend 10 years or more outside of the country. And that's for individuals who entered unlawfully more than once and accumulated a certain amount of time within the US without status. So depending on that scenario, some individuals, entered without inspection and then had a family emergency or had a situation that required them to go back to their home country after some time. They went back after some time and then returned again without status, without permission, and then years later, like, okay, well, I got married or my child turned 21, and then unfortunately, based on certain situations, and they meet those requirements of the permanent bar, and their family cannot help them, all because they simply crossed the border without permission more than once. And for me, it's such a heavy penalty for such a minimal violation because it's not a crime, it's just a civil violation. And people shouldn't be penalized to that degree to not be able to obtain status when they have family that can petition for them simply for that reason, right? And these are families who have clean records, have paid their taxes, have always been, contributing to our community, and have no other negative incidents in the background other than how they entered and how many times they came through the border. And then, unfortunately, those individuals aren't able to obtain status through their family members. And so, for those individuals, many times I've been able to assist them through the U visa process if they've been victims of crimes. So the U visa process is for individuals who are here in the US or have been victims of a crime here in the US. And the requirements is the first is that it has to be a qualifying crime under the U visa. The U visa lists a specific list of crimes that are qualifying, but some of those crimes are crimes that we can argue are similar to other crimes. So we can also include other crimes that may be similar, even if it's not specifically listed or named that same way. And so it expands the list of crimes that may be eligible. And also it's not just crimes like, murder or abuse or domestic violence or things like that. It can also be in the setting of employment. And I'll give you guys an example where this might not be as obvious because we don't think about it so much as a crime, is with landscapers. So I had one of my very first cases, back 13 years ago when I started, was working with a group of landscapers who their employer was not paying them their wages, yet forcing them to continue to work, and then not either stop paying their wages or was paying them whenever they wanted, and then obviously not following our labor laws. And so the owner was then threatening the landscapers that if they reported them to the Department of Labor, that they knew where they lived, they knew their status, and started threatening them based on their status, based on their family, to not. These landscapers still move forward and file the claim with the Department of Labor, which they have the right to do. And during that process, they were still intimidating them. And so there are two of the qualifying criminal activity is obstruction of justice and witness tampering. And so depending on when those threats occur and what is happening and why are they threatening them, it can either be obstruction of justice or witness tampering. And we were able to assist those landscapers, that group of landscapers, in obtaining the U visa based on that. And actually, many of them now we've reached the point where now they've now become permanent residents. So the U visa is also a pathway towards citizenship. So then that's the first element, is ensuring that these individuals, that the crime, that the activity qualifies under the U visa. The second important is reporting. So it's very important that the person reports, and it doesn't just have to be the police. It could be other agencies. It could be reporting the crime to a judge, like an order of protection. It could be reporting to the Department of Labor. It could be to other agencies. It has to be an agency, a government agency that did some type of investigation. And so that's very critical. If anyone ever suffers from anything, no matter how minor it might seem or afraid they may be, they really need to make sure that they file that report. They have the right to make these reports and have protections for being victims. And so then it's reporting. And then past the reporting, it's cooperating. It's making sure that not just that you reported, but that you follow through all the way to the end. Many times, sometimes, example, victims of domestic violence are then withdrawing their order of protection or no longer wanting to continue with the process. If you stop the process and you don't continue to cooperate, then unfortunately you will not be eligible for the U visa. So cooperation is critical for people to see it all the way through. But it doesn't require that the person be actually arrested or that the person be actually convicted or that at the end the person is guilty. If the police just didn't find the offender and they decide to suspend or close the proceedings, the investigation, then that is their choice, and that will not affect the person from being able to be eligible for the U visa, so long as they cooperated up to the extent that they were required and asked for help. Sometimes the other thing that happens with cooperation is individuals change their numbers, relocate, and now the police don't know how to contact them. Or sometimes that person, especially in domestic violence situations, never had access to a phone, or that phone was, owned by the offender. And so they then don't have abilities to stay in contact with the police. So in situations where the person changes number, doesn't have actually access to a number, is for them to somehow still stay in contact with the police department, because if they do need additional assistance and they couldn't locate the person, they will, especially the Chicago Police Department, will always make a note in their reports that the victim, they couldn't locate the victim, the victim was not cooperating. And if there's some type of language like that in that history of that incident, then it's very difficult for us as immigration attorneys to overcome that language and get the police department to give us the certification we need to move forward on the U visa. So I always encourage people to stay in contact with the police, even if they are not contacting you, until they tell you that things have completely ended. And then the last thing is that the person can demonstrate that they suffered substantial physical or mental harm. And I think we're at about 10 minutes, right? Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so but this U visa has a waiver, and this waiver forgives so many things. And so it really allows individuals, and this waiver isn't available under like family petitions or things like that. And so it's a waiver that is very generous, and we can include many different types of violations for people to help them be able to adjust. The only downside with the U visa is that unfortunately it is taking almost 9 years for us to actually get a U visa. But there are certain programs in between that we may be able to provide families with work permits and socials, depending on the programs, to be able to get them some type of status before that time period. But many times the U visa is the only option for these individuals. So I have, for many people that I couldn't help through family, I have been able to help through the U visa. So I like to inform people about this specific visa that really assists many families. And it also allows them to petition other family members, include their spouses, include their children who are minors, etc. So it also assists us in keeping families together. And then lastly, regarding family petitions. So for individuals who do have families that are citizens or lawful permanent residents, we break it down. First, we want to identify, is this person an immediate family member or is it a preference family member? Because that will determine how long this process takes. So immediate family members are U.S. citizen spouse, child, or parent of a 21 and over U.S. citizen child. And preference category is, I'll just leave it at that, the other individuals, right? So that's the first thing we identify to see how long can this process take. And then the second thing is, is the person eligible to do the process in the US or do they have to have their interview outside? So I'll give you guys just a brief example of a scenario. A US citizen spouse petitioning their immigrant spouse. If that spouse entered with some type of inspection or parole or was at some point inspected and admitted and or has exceptions for 245I or the military, then they are able to do the process in the US. And those individuals are taking right now about 16 months. So anywhere between 16 to 24 months here in the US. So if you think about it, it's about a year and a half to 2 years for somebody with normal situations here in the US who entered lawfully. For those that, let's say, that same individual entered without inspection and just entered once, we're looking at about almost 5 to 6 years for that process. And so it makes a huge difference. And these timelines are just so long. When I first started practicing 13 years ago, it would take almost 3, 5, or 8 months to process a green card. And now we're looking at 2 years or more. And unfortunately, now with people in proceedings, the courts are not being very gracious with their time and are not even allowing people who are eligible through family members to remain here if they cannot show that they can obtain that status within the year or shorter. Because according to now the most recent decisions that have been coming out in the courts is that a year or more is too long of a process. And unless they can adjust or obtain status through other means more immediately, then either they present their trial or they have to return, request voluntary departure, or they'll issue an order of deportation. So it really is heartbreaking to see many individuals in court that are eligible, but because this system is taking so long in processing their cases, they are being forced to make tough decisions, even though they have eligibility to stay. Um, so I'll open it up for questions because I can go on and on this so much. So, and
Daisy, you're a wealth of information, and thank you for sharing so much information as to the different pathways and grounding us on what has happened in the past, but more importantly, what is currently happening and some of the constraints and barriers in that way. We do have a few more questions. Eddie Rano asks, what tangible proof does a person applying for a U visa need to compile or provide to file a petition?
so the first thing I always ask my clients is for the consultation is provide me that report. We can obtain the reports, but at least for us, private law firms charge for anything that we do. And these are things that people don't have to pay us to do. They can, if they don't have that report, they can fill out a little half sheet for you at the police department. So go to the police station, wherever that may be. If it's in Chicago, it's on Michigan Avenue. If it's in a suburb, go to that specific location and ask for a copy of that report. Also ask if they can check if there's been any other reports that you may have filed in any other point, in any other periods. Because based off of that report, we can see what was the facts, what did the police actually specifically say was the crime, because that also matters depending on the police station. And then we can provide a more thorough assessment and the consultation of what could be the options for that person. So the first thing for us is I cannot consult or really give somebody more definitive answers without seeing those reports. If it was an order of protection, obtaining, giving me those records of that order of protection, or if it was a complaint in court, whatever complaint it was, providing that documentation so that we can review.
Wonderful. Um, Anonymous has asked, what is the best way to find an immigration attorney? Is there a list of recommended law firms available? Also, is it critical to hire locally?
Yes. So there's I would say two recommendations, or actually three. One, ICER. So ICER also on top of having like the legal aid list, they also have a private attorney list. Then AILA. So AILA is a national immigration organization that is amazing. You know, any credible, good immigration attorney is always a part of AILA, and they do a lot of national litigation and work. And so they also have directories as well that they can separate based on location. And then the third is an organization I'm also a part of. It's called the Justice Entrepreneurs Project. So JP is a part of the Chicago Bar Foundation, and we are private law firms that none of the participating law firms charge billable hours. So everyone in our firm does flat fees. And that one specifically, that organization, we have attorneys in all areas, not just immigration. So if somebody needs an attorney in something else or another area, they can also look up the JP, Justice Entrepreneurs Project, and then we have a directory where they can see and filter that. And then I'm a part of that. I'm part of both AILA and JP.
Wonderful. And I think that we'll be compiling these resources and sending them out after the webinar.
There
Anita,
was a second question to that.
yes.
Where
Is it
in the Say that again. Locally, yes, it does matter. I do encourage people to obtain attorneys locally. It also depends. If a person is detained because of all of the changes that they've done to bonds, if we have to file habeases, then you need a local attorney who is licensed in that federal district to be able to file those, or we, if we're not in that district, need to co-counsel with a local attorney to be able to file some of those petitions. So we can be restricted in that aspect regarding habeas, but everything else with immigration, we are able to. But I also, if I know that a person is being detained and I don't know that specific court, then I feel like I'm doing an injustice by assisting them when I don't know how the preferences of those judges and certain specific preferences locally that many times can make a difference in how we proceed and what we do. So if I feel like I'm not the best fit, then I will tell somebody, I think it's in your best interest to find someone locally. So consider somebody locally first, and then or if you want to consult with somebody here and then see, should you work with somebody locally and us here, or is there a way of collaborating?
Wonderful point. Thank you so much. Anita Bueno asks a pretty important question. Would a temporary fence around a construction site qualify to delineate private space with regard to an ICE search? Or what ways can one protect exposed workers like construction workers?
I think that is a great suggestion for them to do that. I would definitely be doing that. And then also around the fence, posting the signs, right? That this is a private space and ICE is not authorized. Now, will ICE respect that? That's a different scenario. But to the extent that you can do that, I would encourage people to do that.
So I see that we're at 4 o'clock. We do have a
I've
few
got a
more
bit of,
questions.
I do have time. We could stick around if we're able to.
Wonderful, thank you. Anita also has another question. How do you know if a signature on a judicial warrant is actually a judge? And that's a pretty,
That's a good question. You could always, well, what I would be doing if I was in that situation, I would Google. Look, because under the signature, it should have the printed name. So you may not be able to read the judge's signature and know who it is, but it'll have the printed name. So I would Google that name and see what comes up.
excellent. Susan asks, if you are arrested as an ally, do you go to the same attorneys?
Oh, if you were arrested, what do you mean? Do you go to the same attorneys?
I think she's trying to ask, who who is the best attorney to
Oh,
reach out
okay.
to?
So it wouldn't be to me as an immigration attorney, it would be with a criminal defense attorney. So, for example, most of us immigration attorneys, we have our wide network, and so we have our trusted criminal defense attorney. We refer people, also civil rights attorneys that we refer people, unless that firm specializes in various areas and they can assist you with multiple aspects, then you may be able to have the same attorney or the same firm depending on that. But any violations, if you're protesting or documenting or recording, things like that, would be a civil rights. If you are arrested, it would be a criminal defense attorney. And then if you're undocumented and an immigrant, it would be the immigration attorney.
And if you are a bystander who decides to record or to document what you see in a situation, what are the pathways or how do you follow up post the situation to ensure that that material gets to anyone who may need it? Do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I mean, I guess it depends if I've seen people where they posted on social media and then individuals, their families have been able to identify them and then connected with that person. If you don't know that person and you're just a bystander and you recorded it, then posting that footage, if you know nothing about this person, or maybe prior to posting, if it go by the neighborhood or other people around there, do those people know who that person is? If not, seeing if anyone in that neighborhood or in those businesses can identify who that person is or who their family is. And then if not, then sharing on social media to see if anyone on social media can identify those people. And then once you've identified the family, then sharing that information. Or also contacting ICER, maybe sharing that information with them and seeing if they can assist in where to provide this information.
Great advice.
Oh, and then
One,
lastly, I know I've been discussing ICER a lot, but there's a lot of other local organizations. So check your local neighborhood community organizations and see, do they have rapid response teams? And so another organization, HLAI, which is the Hispanic Lawyers Association of Illinois, they have a rapid response team, and they are expanding it to be more of not just attorneys, but opening it up to the community as a community rapid response team. And so I have seen a lot of organizations having their own rapid response teams. So maybe looking up locally where you're at in your neighborhood if there are any rapid response teams.
that's a great one, recommendation. Eddie also asks, how can someone applying for any type of status ensure they are not being taken advantage of in regard to pricing? I understand that these processes are expensive, but with the current situation, some firms have been increasing their prices.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there is increase in pricing because things have become more challenging. This administration is asking us for more requirements, and many times also for like our firm specifically too, we are being stricter in including more documentation to prevent us from having cases denied or requesting for more evidence later down the road. So unfortunately, this administration has just naturally increase the level of work that we have to do, and then also incorrectly rejecting things that shouldn't have been rejected to again create more work that then requires us to have to spend more time outside of what we anticipated. So I would say the first thing is during the consultation, is that attorney being honest with you about the realistic expectations of your risk assessment, right? Are they really explaining to you where are the downfalls in your case? Is there any risks? And being open and honest with you about that. Are they taking the time to explain to you in a way that you can understand the process specifically for your case? Or are they in 5 minutes just telling you yes or no? or are they using some type of like online system to screen you and then give you a result? Or are they offering like free consultations and then just telling you a yes or no real quick, or not really taking the time to explain things? If an attorney just gives you an answer and can't really break down the process for you to understand it, then I don't think that that person would be giving you the level of quality representation that you deserve for the amount of fees that you are paying. My consultations typically take anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, and really allows us to ask all the questions and then have time to explain people the options and the process, and then have time at the end to answer any additional questions. And then after that consultation, so I think in the consultations, those are some red flags. Are they quick? Are they explaining? Are they just rushing through? Are they giving you options, etc.? Are they pressuring you to, sign a contract right then and there, etc.? And then past that is reviewing their agreements. Are they really laying out in their agreements all of the things that they're going to do? So in my agreements, we are very specific that all the points of the different tasks that we are assigned to do. So it's very clear to someone when a certain task is included and what is additional or what's unforeseen. And so taking a look at their agreements, are they detailed and do they really specify what work they're going to be doing? Or are they just saying, green card process, but then don't tell you all the steps and the things that are included, so that you're then really transparent and aware of what is included and what is not included.
That's a wonderful recommendation. It sounds like we have to interview attorneys as we go through this process and not do our due diligence as well.
Exactly. And who do you feel, your instincts, trust your gut. Does do you feel like you're comfortable with this person? Because they're going to be your best friend for some time. So if you don't trust that person from the beginning, or if you don't feel comfortable, then you're going to be with that individual for some time. And so you want to be able to pick an individual that's a right fit for you.
Excellent recommendation. There's two more questions. Anita asks, can you talk a little bit about the difference between dealing with ICE and Border Patrol?
Okay. So both agencies have like Border Patrol can have other different rights in terms of like what they can do at the border within certain parameters, and how they can return people or detain people or process people. And then ICE here within the US then has other parameters of how they can detain people and process people. And so there are differences between what people encounter with a border patrol, and then what they can encounter here within the US.
And I think that we'll probably end it there. Any final thoughts, Daisy, on things that you would recommend us all do for next steps?
Yeah, so I would recommend for you guys to try to find an attorney that you do trust, or look up those organizations. If you want to contact our office, my information is there as well. Try to schedule a consultation and try to see if there are any options for you. In my consultations, when somebody doesn't have options and I have to break the bad news, then I provide them with information of like what some of the things we discussed here, but more one-on-one for them specifically on what can they do to try to protect themselves as much as possible during this administration. And also, even if a person, if we consult with them and we see that there are no options for them right now, I always tell somebody, do not give up, because there are options when you are detained. There are petitions that somebody can be able to obtain status through detention, that may not be available to you prior to that. So at the end of the day, even if I can't help you right now, still don't sign anything, still don't do anything, still don't just voluntarily return. Give us the opportunity to help keep fighting for you, and contact an immigration attorney to see if you have options while being detained.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Stacy. I just want to, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all your sharing, all your wisdom, all of that you have given us today. Is really helpful, and I think it's going to be very helpful for our community. And, I think the most
Information is
important.
power.
Exactly, exactly. The more we know, the more we're prepared, the more we know how to do it. And then I think also just for all of us to know that we're all in this together and to
Mhm.
feel that we can be empowered in the space of bringing community together. And I also want to do a big thank you, big shout out to Mafe, to Javier, to Adrienne for all the work you do behind the scenes, to Citlali and Amina for an amazing moderation of this panel, and for all of the other people who have made it possible for us to put this whole webinar series. This is our third one. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes and a lot of people that have poured their hearts and their just their beings into this webinar series. So to all who attended, also thank you very much. And the next one in person is going to be in Detroit at the Landscape Architecture Foundation celebration 60-year anniversary. So that's in June, first weekend of June 4th to 6th, I believe. And then at ASLA. So I hope I see you all in Detroit. I hope you can kind of attend. It'll be great to see you in person. And thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Of course.